What is your secret to living a long, fulfilling life?
You have to look after your health. You need to pay attention to and avoid bad habits like smoking or too much alcohol or too much fast food. You need to pay attention to diet, exercise, and I don't think the youth of today is getting enough exercise. We were brought up, you're out in the summertime for sure, you're out on the street playing and, until the sun went down. So we were always fit. But I don't see that today. I see too many overweight youth and not enough physical activity. And I think you have to look after your health starting at a young age, because bad habits, start eroding your health. So you need regular checkups as well. It's important.
Sense of humor, smiling. My daughter-in-law, who's very actively engaged in the insurance business and so on, decided one day to follow my example and smile at strangers. And she started to do that about, maybe a year or more, a couple of years now. And she has reported back to me what a difference it's made in her life. Just smiling at a stranger in a bus stop. I mean, sense of humor, irreverence.
There's a new book. I don't know if you've seen it. Well, it's not that new, but a couple of years old. It's called The End of Old Age, and it's not death. This is a gerontologist who says the people who live the longest are the ones who enjoy life, who have a project. Maybe they're interested in art, or they're interested in music, or they're interested in people. People who stay engaged as they get old. Forget about the number of years you're going to live. Because we can't tell that. I mean, we may take good care of ourselves and get really obsessed with that. And this guy says, don't be so obsessed with that stuff, Think about, what are you going to do next? And that's something I certainly ask myself a lot. Here we are, we're in a senior's residence. And it's something that all of us, I think hard about. Do you really want to live in a community of only older people? But of course you can stay engaged with lots of other people at the same time. And it's important to have a kind of a plan, like what next? That's what I think is important. And I think people who are looking for, what meaning of life, purposes, they don't have to be grand, important projects. But I want my kids to know I love them and I support them in what they do. But I'm not a helicopter mom, never was. We have one fellow in Barcelona who's a musician, who teaches, and who is also, he's quite well known over there as a trumpeter. And my other son is also musical, but he said, no, I'm not going to be a musician, I want a life. Because, musicians are limited. They don't have opportunity to become really famous and wealthy. Now, Dan and Laia, his wife, are both professional musicians, and they've done all right. They have 2 little kids, though, 13 and 9. My other son said, no, I'm not going to be a musician. I want to have a life. David and I always laugh and say, well, we're not sure exactly what he does, but he prepares businesses, mainly in television and cable programs, but big ones, and he prepares them for takeover, either by another person or go public. And he loves what he does. And the funny thing was, he never liked math when he was in school. And here he is working on this company and how much money it's making, and is it growing, is it a good company? And he prepares the company and the employees for takeover. He hasn't very often stayed with the company. That usually means the end of that particular job, right? But he's always got a lineup of people because he's good at what he does, and he loves it. And the fact, and he reports directly to the CFO and the CEO, so he's fairly high up in it. But he's also a people person, And I think a lot of people who are in financial business jobs are more obsessed with money. What's the bottom line? What are we going to do? He has to know that, but he also has to be able to relate to the employees. And, and he loves what he does. And so far, at 58, he's usually, I don't want to jinx him, but he's usually got a job waiting somewhere. He's never worried about it.
Now to stop on little misunderstanding and try and fix it.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of families, they hold on to these little things, and
Yes,
these
you're
disagreements
right.
last for decades, and then they refuse to talk
And-
about it.
Yeah, and certain times I would ignore it and leave it because I probably will not be attracted to that person, or if I said something and I believe in what I've said, I'm not going to waste my time a few years later. That's the point, really.
How do you recommend people get over what other people think of them?
To carry on and be independent, and independent with kindness. Because very often there's a point where you become selfish, right?
So what does independence with kindness look like?
Independence is to be able to be yourself, to satisfy a certain part of yourself while you're raising children, but it's not that easy to do that. At times it's very hard.
Just being yourself. Be yourself and enjoy what's around you.
Why do you think people struggle with being themselves?
I don't know. Maybe they're not happy in what they're doing.
How do you stay engaged, excited, happy for life? Like, you've got an amazing energy at 101 years old. How do you keep the joy and excitement every day?
I enjoy everything. I go to exercise every day. We all have good time.
What's the most important lesson you learned from each of your parents?
They're both from modest backgrounds. When I was a young teenager, I guess, I thought I knew everything. And so my father wasn't very smart, in my view. When I was in my early 20s, I suddenly realized that he became very smart all of a sudden. And I thought about that for a long time. I wonder how that was. And I realized I became a little more mature. And I didn't know so much when I was younger. And he was, he wasn't all that well educated and so on. But he knew life, he understood life, and his advice was always, appreciated and worthwhile listening to. And it was enjoyable to chat with him, And I always regretted looking down when I was so smart, at a young teenager, and I didn't know anything. But it took a while to realize that.
And what about your mom?
Well, she was a wonderful person. My father went overseas in 1940. It was interesting. He was in the militia reserve army, as a sort of a hobby. When war was declared, his unit in our town was activated for active service. And so everybody was re-interviewed. He was 40 years old and 5 kids at home. So they said, "Thank you very much, but we don't need you, look after your family." He didn't think that was right because he was very patriotic. He hitchhiked 100 miles to Montreal to join an infantry unit, the Black Watch of Canada, and he was sent overseas. An infantry soldier at 40 years old, My heavens, that's a 20-year-old game. But once you got to England and they realized that, he was too old to be a combat soldier. So they made him the camp electrician. So he served over there for 4 years, just helped, around the base. So my mother was raising 5 kids at home, without my father, and we were brats. So it was a real challenge, but she was wonderful. She did a great job. We all ended up pretty successful, so kudos to her.
What's something you used to think mattered a lot but realized wasn't important as you got older?
Well, there's lots of things, I think. I suppose when we're younger, women especially pay more attention. I still pay attention to how I look, but as a young person, you really are almost obsessed. When I was a kid, I was very worried because I have a bump in my nose. And when I was a young girl, 14, 15, I mustn't let them take my picture from over there because I've got this horrible bump in my nose. How you look is not as important as you think, because what you project, I think, in your face is how you feel. And if you're interested in the person you're talking to, things go better, always, and you have to listen carefully with your mind as well as your ears.
How do you deal with loss?
Very badly, I mean. And yet, not so much. I think of my parents a lot, and maybe that also comes with aging. You're so busy with other things, raising children, occupying yourself, having a good time, and all sorts of things. But you learn to, you can overcome all this. And thinking of my parents, I do, probably because I have more time to think about it, and I remember them well.
Do you have a regret that you learned a valuable lesson from?
Not really. I've had a good life. I had friends, and I stayed home. And I looked after my mother. When my brothers and sisters left home, got married, and we had a good life together. So I couldn't wish for a better life than what I've had. And of course, coming to Dalmanor has helped. I've had a good life here. And I hope I still do.
What advice do you have for people trying to find meaning and purpose?
Chart a path for you that makes sense for you, and focus and stay committed to that. Be prepared to learn as you go along in case there's obstacles or whatever. You may learn from that and may have to make a detour or whatever. But the ultimate goal, stay focused on that.
Do you have a story from your past, or did you struggle with that at all, or where you had to make a courageous choice?
Yeah, I did. I guess the most difficult time, I served in Gaza for 10 months with the UN peacekeeping. And during that time, there was no phone service, there was no internet, there was no such. You communicated with your wife, I did, by mail, and that took a long time to get a response and so on. Anyway, but I learned I knew she was pregnant when I left, so she was carrying our first child when I was over there, and she had her first depression while carrying this child, and was admitted to an institution in Guelph called Homewood Sanatorium, and that was difficult. And of course, I was a long way from home. I wasn't allowed to return home, except because I was the aide de camp to the commanding general. He was an Indian officer. He had to go back to India for some reason, so I really had nothing to do. So I arranged to get a flight home, and I did, and I saw my wife for a week, which was wonderful. But then I had to go back, and that was the most difficult decision I've ever made, was to go back. But she encouraged me to do that because, it was my career and my duty was over there. So I've always been so grateful that she understood that, even in her condition. But she got better and produced a wonderful child, and which I didn't see for 5 months. So such is life.
Looking back, what advice would you give your younger self?
Keep open to change, plan, establish some priorities that you would then figure out how to go about, or learning how to go about fixing some things that I wouldn't know how to do. And I don't mean mechanical. Relationships, how to deal with, as a principal, I was dealing with teachers who were incompetent or unkind or what have you, and how to help them be better, because you can't fire them. So at the very least, a lot of my effort went into curriculum development and staff development. My partner in this business, we had a company. We did resume writing and interviewing techniques and helping, and I learned a lot about helping people through that kind of thing. So for learning, if I had things to do over again, I wish I could bring with me or foresee the gifts, the talents, the skills that I have now, which would have been so useful if I'd known then.
What's the most important gift or talent that you would have loved to have earlier?
Less innocence. Other people aren't always as nice as you think they are or would like them to be. But it really irritated me when people told me that other people weren't. Did you not know that he, whatever? I didn't need to know that, and I regret that. So whatever it would take to be open to the new, with the skill, I don't know that I even have it now, the skill to recognize it's not all as it appears, that the person, he's not lying, but he or she is not telling the truth. And I go along with my glass half full and assume the best. And on a couple of occasions, nothing in particular strikes me. It would have been helpful if I'd realized that before I got into whatever it might have been. I'm talking in terms of my work with staff and students and so on.
For someone who is struggling to listen to their heart and find the courage to do it, because they might have a story like, I'm bad at math, so I can't be good in business, or
Exactly.
I'm an artist, so I'll never make money. So and then they never chase their dreams down, but they know it's in them. What advice would you have for them?
I'd say forget your idea of what success is going to be. If you engage in whatever it is your position or your job is, and you really put your heart in it, you like it, and you have a goal in your own mind, like I would like to when I'm interviewing this person, I would like to help them identify what is it that makes you tick? What's your hope? But I'd say stop worrying so much about success and follow your heart. Like too many parents and other people in kids' lives or older people's lives say, oh, don't do that. If you do that, blah, blah, blah. Like, don't be an artist. Don't be a musician. I never said to either of my kids who had the talent and the ability to be professional musicians, I never said, no, you can't do that because you'll never earn enough money, blah, blah, blah. No, I helped them find teachers, and, they've done well, both of them. Danny's a great teacher, and he mentors all his students really well. He taught hockey. Can you imagine? He was a coach of a hockey team in Barcelona when he first went over there, aside from playing the trumpet. So change your idea of a goal and do your best at what you're doing. And for instance, if we do this and you're doing what you want to do, you're trying to find little nuggets that might be helpful to people as they grow up or as they grow into their career. That's what's important. Finding something that you're doing that you feel is meaningful.
Do you think everybody would benefit from military service?
Not everybody, because I think there's people who, they're pacifists and, don't believe in war. But I tell you, the strongest pacifists are soldiers. Once they know what's going on, they don't believe in war either. They'll do their duty, of course. It's a terrible, terrible way to solve international problems. But, the world is not in a very good place right now. And there's always that threat. But, so I think, unfortunately, countries need defense forces.
I think even just the structure and the discipline and the education.
At one point, I commanded the Canadian Forces Recruit School, which meant that every single Anglophone recruit across the country came to the recruit school for their first 12 weeks of training. And it's really convert them from civilians to basic service people. And at graduation, we'd always have a reception. The parents would be there, and a nice parade and all that. And I've had so many parents say, "It's a miracle what you've done for our daughter or my son." Yeah, they're polite, and they make the bed. They tidy up. They're wonderful adults.
What's the key to getting young people to follow you?
You mean in a stressful situation, or?
Well, just in general. I mean, you're taking people. That's a difficult transition from civilian life and their, old habits and ways of thinking to now being in the military, be part of a machine. How do you get people to follow you, to agree with your way of seeing things, to do what you say they should do?
First, they have to have an understanding of what their role is and what your role is as their leader, and treat them with respect, firmly when necessary. But the discipline and the routine, and teamwork, they all become very proud of being part of a unit.
How do you get people from all sorts of different backgrounds, religions, cultures to then function well as a team?
Well, that sometimes is a challenge. I had the first group of indigenous recruits come to me at the recruit school from up north. And it was a challenge for them because the environment was different. You have experienced trainers, and they know how to handle these people, and they did a great job. The idea of sending these Inuit down to us was to make them service people, and then they would go back north, would be posted and stationed up north. None of them wanted to go back north. In a sense, the experiment backfired because they all wanted to stay, in southern Canada. So, and some did, They molded in very well.
What do you hope you're remembered for?
I don't care.
You don't care? Nobody's had that answer yet. That's great.
No, I really don't. I don't think that way.
Okay.
I hope that by now the people I love would know that I love them. And of course, if you know somebody loves you, you're going to treat them well and remember good memories from them. You can think whatever you want. I won't be around.
I love that answer. That's great. That's great.
What's the point?
Okay, it's great.
I'm not going to improve myself anymore now. I am what I am now and stay that way.
What did you learn from each of your parents?
From home?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, but I was brought up with 3 brothers and 2 sisters. And we had our little arguments, naturally, but nothing serious. And we all had good times. My mum, no matter who came, there's always room for one more. No matter who's at the table. And I guess I learned that from my mother. My dad passed away when I was quite young, so I didn't know too much. But I'm sure he was what I do remember, he was very strict.
Any relationship advice for finding somebody who supports you in your goals and dreams?
A life's partner is the most serious choice you'll ever make in life. And I was fortunate I've made the right one. I've been married for 66 years 2 days ago. So
Wow, congrats.
Yeah.
And so how do people find that partner? Any advice?
No, I don't know. It's just a sense, you got the right person. Yeah. But it's a commitment, it's a lifelong commitment. And what I see today is people aren't as committed as I think they should be. Oh, well, didn't work. Try somebody else. I don't get that. So anyway, it worked for me. So
I just celebrated 12 years with my wife, so you're giving me something to aspire to,
oh,
which is
yeah,
great.
well, good for you.
What does success mean to you, and do you think you've had a successful life?
So far, it's not over yet,
True.
I may be older, but I'm not dead yet. So what's important? To be happy in what I'm doing. If you don't like your job or your position in a company, quit. You've got to take risks in order to proceed. And I think our ideas of success are too limited. Like perhaps I do an interview or something and I think, oh, that went really well. And that's happy, that's success. And so you have to learn to listen to yourself and realize what makes you happy is often the success. And also to be learning as you go. Everybody makes mistakes, but no mistake is without a solution, if you want, or a way of changing. Especially as an artist or a musician or doing an interview, if you feel, oh, gee, that was really awful, I hate that, I'm sorry I did such and such, then you play it back to yourself, oh, that's not so bad. Like quite often we judge a thing wrongly, and you have to give it time and say, why, that was really important. Maybe what we do sometimes is important to another person. In other words, I always mentored people, no matter what job I had, or and it doesn't mean giving them advice, because I think you really shouldn't be too free with advice, because it has to be so particular to the person. And the most useful advice is to tell them, take a deep breath and be serious about what you want to achieve in whatever it is you're doing. And sometimes something you think has been a disaster is a real success. Maybe you touched something in a person and gave them some confidence or some reassurance, and you didn't even know you did it. And for me, that's the biggest success. If you can be seen as, well, I think of it as a loving thing. I think I'm a loving person. I have good friends, and my kids are secure, and I have a great husband. Those are successes. So be careful what you're counting as a failure or a success, because you can be dead wrong,
What's one thing you believe young people today should focus more on?
They should focus less on the internet and their devices. You can learn a lot, and I agree, you have to stay abreast of technology. I mean, that's important. But I think there's a lot of time wasted on texting and gaming, and when they should be doing something more useful.
What should they be doing instead?
maybe nurturing relationships like friends and family. And you can't do that texting. It's not the same.
So there's going to be, a lot of people watching who are struggling to rely on themselves, to trust themselves, to believe in themselves. They want to make a change, but they're too afraid. What advice would you give them?
To try to be independent, to rely on themselves before relying on another person, to be independent in a way, to have your own need, to take care of your wishes in the future.
Looking back, what advice would you give your younger self?
I've always been very active, and that's what I would say, be active, be interested in what you're doing, and that's what I've tried to do. Be interested in people.
Before we started rolling,
Yes?
you said this is a new experience and you've never done anything like this before. And I think it just, to your point of be interested and say yes and try new things, here you are at 101 years old, still trying something new.
I can't believe I've made it this far. I've gone through a lot of illness, but I fought it. I've had cancer a couple of times, and other little things, but I've got over it, and I fought it, and I said, I'm going to live. You pray to God that you're going to.
What's a regret that you've learned an important lesson from?
My biggest regret is that I did not complete university, and get a degree. It's always sort of bothered me. Of course, when I finished high school, and I did pretty well, my parents couldn't afford to send me into university, and there weren't the same programs available, scholarships and that kind of thing. I did win a scholarship in high school for $200, but I just turned it down because it wasn't very helpful in terms of going to university. So that's what I enlisted in the Army, and I was there for 28 years. But whenever I was stationed in one place long enough, I went to university. Like when I was in Ottawa, I went to Carleton and earned some credits, and then the University of Manitoba started a program by correspondence, so I got a few more credits there. I ended up with 3 years of university, but I never had the opportunity to finish it because I was away too much and that kind of thing. So it just always sort of bugged me a bit.
What advice do you have for people who are trying to find meaning and purpose?
The skills of planning, the skills of organizing, of consulting, of asking. I have an exercise I used to do with my students, and I've done on workshops. You are the company, and you have a board of directors. Who are you going to have sit at your board of directors table to help you run the corporation that is me? And for instance, you can put people that do good things. I would put my mother there as how not to do it. Her rudeness and her demeaning behavior with others was a beacon for me on how to live. She was a very forceful person in my life, and I swore to God I would never treat people, behave the way she did. And from that perspective, she's a very important member of the board of directors. And so that's an analogy that I find very helpful. Be willing to accept that you don't know, that you need help, and being willing to accept help when it's offered, or to ask when you know you need it. And here, you see a lot of persons who, I'm fine. Well, they want to be fine, but whether having fallen they are needs to be determined before they can be moved. But somebody, that's fine, I've got it. And people who do not know what persons with canes and walkers and so on do and do not need What society needs right now is how to talk to seniors. Because you have gray hair doesn't mean you don't think. And the automatic assumption that because you're elderly, you can't do things, which in many cases is you can't. But then again, being overly helped is irritating. And yet the person means nothing more than to be helpful. But they don't know that helpful for some is irritating. And it's interesting to watch how people, they don't hear and they don't realize that we're all talking about something entirely different they're talking about. And that's sad. And so there's a heck of a lot of education that needs to take place because we're outnumbering you all very quickly.
What advice do you have people who want to have a long, happy relationship?
You have to invest in it, not money necessarily, although that doesn't hurt. You have to invest attention, listen, and listen to more than the words. Like maybe if you're having a quarrel and you're really mad and you're saying things you don't really mean, because we all do that when we're fighting or disagreeing, take a breath and remember the good parts of that person or relationship and back off. But the important thing is to listen, not just with your ears, but with your mind. And it doesn't go for just your husband or your romantic relationships, but your relationships at work, at home, with friends. They all require a person who will listen and try to understand what the person is saying.
How would you define success? And do you feel that you've had success?
I think you can define it as who you've become as a person rather than monetary assets that's a good indication that but if you're happy within yourself as a person, that you're a good person, that's success to me.
And have you hit that for yourself?
Yes.
So looking back, what advice would you give younger you?
Not to be so innocent and trust people at times. I was very, very green, very naive when I arrived in Canada.
What led you to come to Canada?
Well, the problems that were occurring in Africa, in the Congo, they were already in war. And in Rhodesia, we got married. We decided rather than start a job in Africa, it was wise to start in another country. And it was the prime reason for moving here.
What was the most courageous thing that you've done?
Becoming reliable to myself. I was very dependent as a young woman.
Was there a moment that happened, or something that forced you to become that way? Or it's a great message. How did you?
It was naturally having to rely on myself for quite a while, and the mentality in Africa was dependent on the husband.
What advice would you have for young people who are trying to find fulfillment and happiness?
I would say, keep moving. This is what I tell them. Keep moving. Enjoy it. Enjoy what's around you. Because everything here to make you happy, to do things. This is why they have exercise, to keep you moving. And that's what I keep saying. Just keep moving.
I love how you have a very positive and optimistic view on life.
During the war years, one brother was overseas for 4 years. My other two brothers were around Canada. But through those years, I worked assembling binoculars. And then shift work. So it's been a good life, you know. I can't complain.
What's something you used to think mattered a lot, but realized wasn't important as you got older?
I guess what people think of you. You can overemphasize that and let it distract from your path that you've chosen for yourself. You have to be sure that what people are thinking or saying is truly meaningful and not there's no ulterior motives there.
And how do you discern the difference?
That's experience, I think, life experience, and know the source.
What's the biggest thing you learned from your mom and from your dad?
To be honest. Honesty is very, very strong, and I realize now how much it is part of me. I've had very good examples, the way they treat the work people, to the point that my father had one of the employees write to him in Cape Town, because they went to Cape Town, and begging him to come back. And this man was employed to sweep the floor, but my father realized that he was intelligent enough to be taught different things, and taught him how to take care of books. And this young man really begged my father to come back, and because he realized that it wasn't working well, and the man was taking advantage of certain documents that shouldn't have been left there. And he returned, and he got such a moving receipt from the staff. And they were very, very strict about honesty, not only in words, but in practice as well.
How do you raise honest children and grandchildren?
You're showing them, and you tell them why you're acting the way you're acting. My dad didn't say, oh, you have to treat that person well. I saw that he's treating that person well, and I learned to do it.
To be the example.
Mm.
What made you want to join the military?
Well, I'm not really sure. I knew my grandfather was in the British Army for a while, and then when he came to Canada, he joined up the Canadian Army. He was in World War I. My father was overseas as a soldier, and I had uncles, and, well, of course, it was wartime, so that's not surprising. But I suppose that influenced it, and the fact that university was not on the cards for me. So I had no regrets about that. I served for 28 years.
That's great. Thank you. What is something you wish people appreciated more?
Their contribution. I'm a very strong believer that if you're going to be making decisions, you consult the persons who could be affected by the decision, and therefore appreciate the opportunity to speak out, to be welcomed. If not, you don't win the day, but you have a voice. And I wish more people were respectful of one another's contributions, of the importance of being consulted, and grateful to have them in your life as a friend. Appreciation and gratitude.
What are you most grateful for right now?
That I'm here on time.
You were early. It was great.
What am I grateful for? That I'm here at Del Manor. That I'm as well as I am I have my hearing, I have my vision. I'm beginning to lose my vocabulary, which is an outgoing speaker for many years in different workshops, is a serious loss. I get into the middle of a sentence and can't think of the word that I'm looking for. Before it was automatic. Now, if I can't think of it, I can't hook it. I can't retrieve it unless I'm lucky. So I'm grateful for what I still have in terms of my language skills. And I'm very grateful to have been a teacher because my style of living and career are still with me. I'm grateful that I have two sons who are very helpful with their wives, granddaughters, who one of whom has designed the door on my suite outside door. She's an artist. I'm at a happy time in my life. I lived for 25 years on my own, happily. But I just got bored with the notion of not having a decent meal cooked by somebody else. The big decision that I made was one, it was time to do something about me. And secondly, I would not stay in my condo. I would come to a retirement home. And we did the research. We looked around. My real estate agent and I are good friends. We went and visited a number of different, well, 4 of them actually, here, Amica, etc., and chose this one. I was still in the hospital when the time came for the boys to be involved, and I could just smell them thinking, where are we going to put her next? And I said, you're not going to put me anywhere. I am moving back to my condo. I am researching where I will go next, but you're not putting me. We got that sorted out.
What is something you wish people appreciated more?
That's an easy one. Especially as you get older, you understand that life is short. I have so many things that I haven't done yet, and I will do. And it's really important because you always think as you're growing up and so on, it seems like you've got forever, right? And all of a sudden, you're losing friends, or, you have to think hard. My concentration is always, what am I going to do next?
What's on that list of things that still has to get done?
I don't have a list. I'm just in my head. I'm an artist. I paint. I've mainly just painted for myself. So that's really important to me to have a project like that. I also try to work with the people here. We talk about good ideas for projects. And my husband and I would like to travel some more. We have 2 boys. My oldest son is 60. The next one is 58. So when people say, how old are your children? I say, well, I don't know. They're older than I am now. And in a way, it's true because they have more responsibilities, right? The main responsibility David and I have is each other. Make sure we stay well and we stay engaged in life.
What's on the travel wish list? Where do you want to go?
Well, we booked ourselves. We both had some health issues in the last year, and we're fine now. And we've booked a cruise in the Adriatic.
Okay.
And after that, we'll go directly to our son Daniel, who's a trumpet player, a musician. He teaches in a music school, and he has a number of orchestras that he plays in, big band, jazz, and he's quite well known in Spain. But of course, he doesn't make the sort of 5% that makes a fortune, but he loves what he does, and he's a very good teacher. The kids really enjoy him, and he's got a good sense of humor. So
you're not just visiting one country; you're going to visit a whole
we're
bunch.
going to visit that one country, lots of countries, and then we go to Spain, to Barcelona, where we'll spend time with his family, Danny, and his 2 little kids. Being a musician, you don't earn really a lot of money, so they waited to have children until they were older. So their kids are 13, and I think as a girl 13 and a boy who's about 9.
What's something you used to think mattered a lot, but then realized it wasn't important as you got older?
We were raised with, beautiful clothes And I just saw a movie of Christian Dior the other day, and it was a lovely movie. And that's the way we were dressed, and it was important to have these clothes and to present well. And I realized that that's not reality, really.
What is one book you think everyone should read?
Well, as I'm not a reader, but maybe the Bible. I have a friendship book, has all kinds of little writings in it for every day. My nephew gives it to me every Christmas. He gave it to my mom up to the time she passed, and that would be about maybe 50 years, 25, and I've been receiving since then. So that'd be about 50 years.
Wow, awesome.
Beautiful book.
Do you have a favorite mentor from the Army that you learned a lot from?
Well, there were several, because there was a lot of very good leaders. Some not so good, but there were some very good leaders, which one would expect from the Army. One was a general by the name of Dextras, who was chief of the defense staff when he retired. He was very, very good with people, and he set a fine example.
So what did you learn from him?
That other word again, perseverance. Look after your men, and then they'll respond to you. That's the key message. Treat people right, and don't belittle subordinates ever. And that applies to all facets of life.
What is something you wish people appreciated more?
That there are different people, and each person has sensitivity at certain degrees. It depends on the personality, and to be aware of it. I come from Africa, and there was a lot of discrimination and insensitive to the fact that the person could understand what we said. Yeah, it's something that I found very hard to accept. Everybody cannot be like the next person. We each are individuals.
Did you have a dream growing up?
I must have had. I'm sure. I dream usually some good dreams. My great-grandchildren is one of them that I've had for a long time. And a lot of things, nothing special.
You talked about your parents. What's the biggest lesson that you learned from your dad, since you talked about your mom?
Well, he didn't get to have a lot of opinion. So he tried to emulate her when she wasn't around, but he didn't know how it worked. So it's sad. I didn't have a lot of respect for my father, because completely without any ability to change it, he really didn't have any voice in the family, because she was very busy doing it. I love my dad, but he was from Scotland, and he and my mother should never have been married in terms of their attitude and their, as I say, he was more timid, she was bold. He would speak up, and she'd override him. But we all got along, we survived, and my brother died at 50. No, I just think a healthy respect for one another, the ability to be open-minded, to listen very much and to hear, to be willing to share, to keep promises. These are things that are important behaviors, whether I'm with my students, whether I'm with my family, with my friends, with my athletic opponents. Be open-minded. Its glass is half full. In fact, it's 3/4 full.
What's one book you think everybody should read?
Well, I guess the obvious one is the Bible, but some people wouldn't believe that. Anyway, I don't know, but in terms of authors, I was a great admirer of Churchill. He wrote a series, 6 or 8 books on the history of the war. His way with words was amazing. He had a great command of the language, and he used the right adjectives in the right place very effectively. He's a great writer, very knowledgeable.
What's the biggest lesson you learned from Churchill?
Perseverance, I think.
Never give up, never give in.
No, not at all.
What did you do for work when you're in your working days?
I worked as a stenographer. I worked in an office for 42 years. After the war, Second World War, I went to Shaw's Business School, took a course. I got a job. I stayed at that job for 42 years. I could run the office. I'm in touch with a gentleman in Prince Edward Island that used to work for the company. Once in a while, I'll phone him, see how things are going. He says he doesn't know anybody but me that worked there, like keep in touch. So I had a good job. And when I retired, they said, "Why are you retiring?" I said, "Well, it's about time." I was 65. And just enjoy myself. Life has been good. It ups and downs, but you make it.
Looking back on life, what advice would you give your younger self?
I don't believe much in advice. For instance, if I were talking to myself, I would say the one lesson that I didn't learn soon enough was to listen to myself. And most people should understand that when things happen, like if you get an illness or you have an accident, you're the person who knows what's happening. And you know pretty much what you need, although you have to take the medical advice given to you by your doctor. And a good example of the sort of thing I mean, I was a rider, a horseback rider. I had horses, and I was just riding, and I was training. My own horses had died, so I was leasing horses. And I had this young horse who was very, quite highly strung, part thoroughbred. And I was bringing him along with the help of a man who used to be one of the Olympic trainers. And so I was bringing this young horse along. And on this particular day, he was a bit jumpy, and I had been riding for almost an hour, and my right leg was getting tired. I had broken it earlier, not riding a horse, walking. And this young woman who also rode that horse, but she's a professional rider, and she said to me, because I was doing things in a particular fashion, and she said, you should really do that at maybe a trot, or more sensibly even a lope. So I said, well, to myself, the way I was training this horse was we did everything properly at a walk first. And then as he got relaxed and used to the dressage exercises that you do with a horse, then we'd go on to a trot, and finally we would go on to, not a gallop, but a 3-gaited run. But she said, "Oh, no, he's fine, you'll be fine." My head was saying, you know what, your right leg's getting tired. And sure enough, that stirrup got loose. And what happens is, a horse is kind of like a passenger in an airplane. In other words, the rider's driving, telling him what she wants or he wants to do. And I thought, I don't know, but okay, she's been doing this for a long time. She's younger than I am, but she's professional. So I put him into a canter, and my right leg began to lose its stirrup, simply because it was tired. And as soon as that happened, your seat is not secure. Okay. And the horse feels that. And he thinks, oh no, I mean, she's in charge. And he got nervous. And he began to gallop a little bit. And I lost that stirrup. And I thought, okay, I'm coming off whether I want to or not, so I'll make the choice, which is what you really should do. So I shifted my weight and I got my reins where I wanted them. And unfortunately, I curled my back like this as I went down. And I hit the floor, middle of my back. And I broke my back. So what's the lesson there? The lesson is, I was thinking when she said, go, try him at a canter, it's much smoother. And I thought, no, this horse isn't ready for that yet. We do everything at each. But I thought, she probably knows better. Big mistake. Big mistake.
How do you develop the discernment to know when to listen to the voice in your head versus the experts who know what they're doing?
I think what I'd like to say to my younger self is, you know more than you think you do, always. And if you're not sure, don't do it. Whatever. It doesn't have to be riding. It can be anything. And it's important. I'm sure you as an interviewer, you know when things are not going, they're going sideways on you. And you have to sort of listen to yourself. Like, okay, stay calm. Just, take charge again and take it forward. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so I would say to myself, yeah, you've been around the block a few times. You know a thing or two. Listen to yourself first. Today, it's different because the young people today, I think, show evidence of feeling very entitled. Okay? When I was a little girl, if I wanted a bicycle, I had to earn half the money. And that kind of thing. We were not entitled to anything because the first thing was the family looking after itself. So that, I think, for young people, I would say you're not entitled to much. You're entitled to love and attention from your parents, but you're not entitled to expensive things that you think you want or permission to be out late. You have to get permission if you're a kid today, right?
How do people pick the right goal?
You need to ask Solomon that.
Talking to Gordon.
Well, I guess it's whatever you're comfortable with. They can't be pick them out of the air. You have to give some thought to it and be assured that they sort of fit what you want to end up as. It's not easy.
Yeah, I think a lot of people really struggle with knowing where to go and what to do.
I think so. And there's so much knowledge in the world. All the knowledge in the world has been generated in about the last 10 years. I mean, think of that. That's amazing. And so there's a lot to learn. And technology is moving so fast. We'll all be replaced by AI robots and so on. We have to be on top of things.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of the advice you've been given is great, and I think you're keep coming back to know the goal, know the mission, and stay focused and get on top of it. I think a lot of people end up picking the wrong goal, the wrong mission because they're supposed to do it, or somebody coerced them to do it, or they think society wants them to do it, as opposed to figuring out the thing that's in their heart that they want to do. Mm-hmm. So do you have any guidance or wisdom of how to listen to your heart and find the thing that you're supposed to do?
The first thing, don't be afraid of failure, because you can learn from that, and you can maybe adjust your goals or take a different path. But don't be too discouraged with failure, because that's how you'll eventually become a winner.
What does success mean to you, and do you feel you've lived a successful life?
Well, I'm not sure. I can say that success is to achieve whatever you dream of doing. And if you can achieve it, it's beautiful. And there's never a straight line in order to reach it. Sometimes there's obstacles and You have to decide whether you'll accept it and not let it bring you down, or deal with it.
Is there a story or lesson or a bit of advice that you want to leave the world with?
Just to strive for something a little bit higher, if you can, especially if you're young, and to finish it. To finish what you started, if you can. Do it.
It's
But
amazing.
that's going up a little bit too much.
As we wrap up, is there a final message or final story that you want to share that you think people could use right now?
Right now that's a very good thing to add, because we are living through a difficult time, humanity really, not just you and me. And I think it's very easy to feel in this situation, the whole world. I mean, look at all the countries in Europe, they're all struggling. We have to remember that although we don't have a huge role to play in our positions in life, but we have to do the best we can and pay attention to the people around you and keep things in a way scaled down instead of getting frantically upset about the direction politics, for instance, is taking. We can't control that more than voting and participating in whatever way you're capable of, volunteering or contributing what you think is important to that party. And I think that's all. And never forget the most important thing is the fact of loving people, enjoying their company, or paying attention to how people are. Can't think of much else.
That's great. Thank you for bringing love here and giving your attention too. Appreciate you.
It was a pleasure. Thank you.
Do you have any regrets that you've learned a valuable lesson from?
I've been married twice, and my first husband had a severe breakdown, and we ended up separating because of the raising the children. It was amiable, and it was regretful because it was through my son's teenage years that they were very close. We were all very close, but I regretted that his illness was something that couldn't be, that it came upon it. We were not separated as a couple per se. It was because, for me, he was undermining by omission raising the children. I regret that came upon, because our marriage was fine, except what his illness meant in terms of change of plans, change of pace, change of attitude. It was hard on the boys, but we got through it. But I regretted that had to happen. Who wouldn't, I'm always really, really glad in the teaching when the kids get it. It makes you feel good. Oh, you still don't get it, do you? I have to do it. Sometimes I regret the effort. The two things in my life that are the most important and have been my rule of thumb is smile and sense of humor. I smile at everybody. I'm a risk taker, and for me, that's how you get through.
What's the biggest risk you took in your life?
Getting married, maybe, I don't know.
Which time?
That was a huge change of life, and I lived for 25 years on my own, became a principal, have my superintendent's papers, which I never used, of course. I can't speak to one in particular, one regret, one moment. When it meant major change, that means I'm going to have to do something that's I don't want to do, or I don't feel like doing, but I have to do, and I will do it. And I get really, regret isn't the right word, but I get upset when people don't keep promises. For instance, you promised me the notes from the meeting for me to take next week to the whatever, and you don't give them to me, and you don't phone me to tell me that you won't be able to give them to me. I find that offensive. and upsetting, and I'm regretful. The other thing I regret is how many people don't realize the glass really is half full. People who are so suspicious. It never occurs to me that the person might have negative intentions. Whatever it is, it doesn't matter. I just see people and I go for it. And then they say, "But didn't you know?" And I said, "I didn't need to know that. I was, Or here I had thought they were going to be helpful and reliable, and they aren't. And I regret the loss of my expectation."
What is something you wish people appreciated more?
Probably what they have, and they don't realize, what they really have. You hear a lot of politicians complaining about the country is broken. I won't mention any names, but we're pretty lucky, and most people should be satisfied with what they have. Maybe it's a little envy of other people or whatever, but I think we underappreciate what we have.
What do you most appreciate of what you have?
Well, in terms of family, friends, those relationships are really important in life, I think. And maybe they don't put those in the asset column enough.
Can you think of a decision you made earlier on that you're proud of, or a moment where you had to be courageous, where you were afraid to do something and you did it? Is there a story or decision you had to make?
I mean, life hasn't been easy, but whatever came up, I fought through it, tried to look on the bright side.
How do you remember to stay on the bright side?
Be positive. I love everybody around me. I don't know.
You have such a warm personality and a very kind energy. I think people would aspire to it. To be 101 and still be full of life and happiness and positivity and energy,
Yeah.
I think is amazing.
And I feel so good. I have a friend now who just moved to Calgary, but we keep in touch. But we're 30 years. We've been friends, going out walking. Just keep going. Just be kind. Be kind to everybody. Because you treat people the way you'd like to be treated. And that's the way it works.
To see another amazing interview in our Elder series and get more life advice and wisdom, check the video right there next to me. I think you'll love it. Continue to believe, and I'll see you there.
We are here with Louise, turning 90 in a month, looking great. And we're going to get some life advice and get her story out and hopefully inspire the world.
Oh,
You ready to go?
that'd be nice.